Trump takes square aim again at the FBI leadership in a series of tweets. We'll break it all down along with all of the other headlines of the week with expert analysis and powerful political panels. Plus, Judge Jeanine's special Street Justice is just ahead. But first, joining me now to react to all of the developing stories and the GOP bill's historic passage is Congressman Ron DeSantis of Florida. Thank you so much for being here and taking your time on this Christmas Eve to be here. We appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening. So first, let's get to the good news. You were down at the White House with President Trump's big celebration of the tax bill this week. Can you tell us a little bit about how that was for the president and for you?
Well, look, it was a landmark piece of legislation. It's been since Ronald Reagan where you've had a major overhaul of the tax code. A lot of people said it couldn't be done. We got it done. And in the president's first year, which is great. I mean, if you look, Obama, he got Obamacare in the second year, not the first year. Other presidents have not necessarily been able to do this in the first year. You'd have to really go back to Ronald Reagan to have something this big. So I think everyone was really excited, and hopefully it'll be a roadmap for going forward. We've seen the Senate have problems get things across the finish line. I saw a lot of senators there that were happy to have got something done. So the House, we're going to keep passing legislation. Hopefully the senators can line up, get those 50 votes so we can do things like welfare reform, do things like build the wall.
So what about that moving forward? The president has talked about going forward and selling this bill, but has also said that once people see this in their paychecks in February, it'll sell itself. So what is the GOP planning on doing moving forward to make sure that people understand what's in this legislation?
Well, it's amazing, and I think I can only attribute this to media disinformation. The vast majority of taxpayers thought that they're going to get an increase under this bill, which is just crazy. 95% of taxpayers are going to get a tax cut. I struggled to find any numbers in Florida for middle-income families where they would somehow be worse off. I mean, every number I ran was better. So I think people are going to see that, and I think people will realize that the press coverage of this wasn't really in tune with the reality of the bill.
Well, speaking of press coverage, one of the criticisms of the bill is that there's a permanent tax cut for corporations, while tax cut for individuals and families has a sunset clause. That has to do with the rules. Can you kind of clear up that controversy and the criticism for the viewers?
It's all based off Senate rules, and they had to have some of the tax cuts be 10-year window, basically. But here's the deal. I'm going to be pushing, along with some of my other colleagues, if the Democrats object to the fact that the individual rates expire in 10 years, let's put a bill on the floor in early January when Congress goes back. Let's make all the individual rates permanent. We'll see if the Democrats are willing to join us. Republicans obviously want the rates permanent, and we will definitely do that. I don't know if the Democrats in the Senate will help us. We'll see.
So tax cuts and reform are certainly not over, but we're going to move on to another topic. The FBI has been in hot water for the past few weeks as we've seen biased texts against anti-Trump bias at the FBI. What is the status of the investigation from the House? You're on the Oversight Committee, you're on the Judiciary Committee in the House. What is going on now with that scandal?
Well, I think it's important to point out, I mean, obviously there was a lot of anti-Trump sentiment with this key FBI agent, Peter Strzok, who is the lead agent for the Hillary investigation and the lead agent in this Russia investigation. But it was more than that. He wrote a text message to Lisa Page talking about a meeting that they had in Andrew McCabe's office, who's the FBI deputy director. And he said, I wish I could take what you said about Trump not being able to win and take that to the bank, but I'm not sure that the FBI can take that risk. And we need an insurance policy basically to stop Trump from being elected. So that is the reason he got kicked off the Mueller probe. And so the question is, what was that insurance policy? Most of us on the committees at this point go back to that Steele dossier that was paid for by Hillary and the Democratic Party to dig up dirt on Trump. There's a lot of fake news in there, false claims. Nevertheless, the FBI took cognizance of that dossier at some point. We're trying to figure out whether the FBI paid Christopher Steele for that, and then whether the FBI used any of that to get surveillance over Trump associates. And if that's the case, if the answer to those questions is yes, then what you have is the Obama DOJ working with the Hillary campaign and Democratic Party to get surveillance over someone associated with the opposite party. That's a major deal if true.
Right. So what about the accountability aspect of this? Because we have the American people who see this happening over and over again inside of the government. What are you doing specifically? Are there subpoenas on the table? Are contempt charges on the table for the FBI not answering your questions? Andy McCabe was on the Hill this week testifying. It doesn't seem like lawmakers were satisfied with what he said because his testimony was not in congruence with other testimony that's been given by other witnesses. So how does this actually move forward in terms of some kind of accountability and cleaning up the FBI?
So all subpoenas for sure. McCabe has come in, very unsatisfactory testimony, and you see the news today. He's moving on, and I think that may be a reason why. We need to subpoena Bruce Orr, who was one of Sally Yates, the deputy AG's right-hand man at the Justice Department. He was meeting with the author of the dossier, Christopher Steele, during the election, and his wife works for Fusion GPS. So you got to subpoena Orr, you got to subpoena the wife, you got to subpoena other folks like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page who were involved in this. They need to be under oath. They need to be deposed. None of the stuff like they did with Hillary where they just asked her some softball questions, didn't put her under oath, didn't transcribe. These are legitimate, transcribed, and if they lie, then they'll be held accountable. But contempt for sure. If the FBI isn't going to give us the information that we're asking for in terms of the dossier, then we should hold both Rosenstein and Christopher Wray in contempt.
Yeah, it's far from over. It's going to be a wild ride once we get back from the new year, I'm sure. Merry Christmas, Congressman Ron DeSantis. Thanks so much.
Merry Christmas.
And joining me now with more reaction to the tax bill and other headlines, Blaze TV host Lawrence Jones and former Democratic member of the Ohio Senate, Capri Cafaro. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. First, I want to start with some breaking news. There's a federal judge out of Seattle who has partially lifted parts of the Trump administration's travel ban, saying that the ACLU's argument has stood in court, allowing some of that ban to be lifted. Lawrence, your response?
Well, when people talk about the accomplishments of this president, we always go back to the 12 appointees when it comes to our judges, our federal judges. This is why we need good conservative judges that respect the Constitution. Everyone knows that the president has the authority when it comes to immigration to protect this country. And what we're seeing is that another liberal judge is doing the same old thing, playing politics with immigration policy.
Capri, the ACLU is representing a Somali man who's trying to bring his family here. The judge says they've already been extensively vetted. They've passed security and medical clearances. But isn't this going to be a fight in the future, considering the president wants to end chain migration?
Certainly. I mean, there's no question about the fact that this debate is not over, as you mentioned, with the issue of chain migration. And frankly, what we're going to see in 2018 is, the possibility for immigration reform, for issues like having to deal with DACA by March. Now, obviously, the issue of the travel ban and DACA are not the same thing, but the policy issue of immigration is not going away. We do need to remember that there are three branches of government, and the reason why we do have appellate courts and the judicial system at large, and the framers were smart to make sure that we have balance in our government, is to ensure that no branch of government overreaches. So, obviously this is within the court's purview. But there, I'm sure will be further appeals, and I'm sure the executive will come back. The easiest way to fix this is to pass legislation.
Well, speaking of topics that aren't going away, tax reform is going to be one of them. We have an election coming up, Lawrence, and I think it's going to be very difficult for Democrats to argue against people having more money in their paychecks.
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult fight for them, Katie. I wanted a little bit more when it came to the individual. I'm all in support of the corporations getting a tax cut as well. But you know what? People are going to start to see more money in their bank accounts February and March. That's what members of Congress are saying right now. And it's going to be really difficult for them to argue against that. Remember, this is something, when we talk about the president's accomplishments, this is one that's tangible. This is one that the American people are going to actually actually be able to feel. So this is a plus for him. I'm interested to see the Democrats' rebuttal on this.
Capri, Democrats have been arguing in the media and in their fundraising emails that this is just $1,000. It's just $2,000. It's not really the greatest thing in the world. They're not accepting the bonuses that all of these corporations are giving out as really any kind of substantial pay increase. And we've also seen corporations increasing their minimum wage to $15, which, as we've seen, is a leftist cause, right? So how are Democrats going to use that argument going into 2018? Do you think it's really going to work?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. I mean, I think the only argument here to be made is that you obviously need to first have a job in order to get a bonus. That's a fair fact. But the fact that there are Democrats out there saying it's only $1,000 and this is a PR move, look, I'm from Ohio, and I can tell you that if an individual or a family had an extra $1,000, it's going to mean a lot at the end of the day for that family. Right. So I think that that's a little bit short-sighted and very much a coastal inside the Beltway view that $1,000 doesn't go very far. Right. Come to northeastern Ohio. That is not the case. Yeah. So my view is that Democrats really need to show what they are going to offer for the American public coming up in 2018. More than just be against something, we need to be for something. And as the other guest mentioned, there could have been more done for the individual. No question about it. Let's focus on going forward, on focusing on infrastructure, focusing on how we can show that we're the adults in the room and that we can govern.
Well, Lawrence, we just had Congressman Ron DeSantis on, and he just said he's willing to bring up permanent tax cuts for individuals as soon as we get back from the so-called Christmas break after the new year. Are Democrats really going to jump on board with that because of the political implications, or are they going to resist as they have throughout President Trump's first year?
They better not. They better not resist.
I can see them resisting because this is about politics now. I'm already seeing the talking points of this only being 10 years. This can be an easy fix. Democrats can make the commitment to the American people that they're going to keep it, the percentage down, or improve it even better. How about they bring a bill to the floor and say, let's get this individual tax rate down? I think Republicans would get on board.
Well, the Republicans need to let them bring it to the floor first. They need to actually let them bring it to the floor, let them have it go through
they got to write a bill first.
All that stuff.
They actually have to produce a piece of legislation first. But my question to follow up on 2018, because we're almost there. We're only a couple of days away from January 1st. President Trump won because he flipped 100-plus counties that were Barack Obama blue to red for Trump. Now, how is that going to play out in counties like that where people are getting a tax break? How are Democrats going to get those voters back being based on for something? What does that for mean?
Well, let me just tell you first off, I am actually from one of those counties. My home county, Trumbull County, Ohio, voted for Donald Trump, went blue for the first time since 1928. And that's basically because Democrats voted for Donald Trump. And we do care about economic and kitchen table issues. I do think, for example, if we are able to show that, if Congressman DeSantis goes and says we're going to have a permanent tax cut and change it from a sunset to 10 years, if we get on board with something like that and do augment it, that's one way where we can show that we are willing to come together for solutions for the American people. We also have to not forget that we only have a very temporary, extension of our budget. There is a continuing resolution. So we have to deal with things like children's health and everything else, children's health, DACA, et cetera, and infrastructure.
Right. Lawrence, last word to you.
But Democrats aren't as reasonable as Capri is. Remember, Capri gets it because she's from a county that voted for Donald Trump, and they swing back and forth. So she's understanding. She understands that $1,000 when people are living paycheck to paycheck,
Pelosi, right?
Is
or
pretty
Chuck
good.
Schumer.
She's not Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, and I think they should be listening to Capri.
Thank you.
New leadership in Washington, D.C. from the Democrat side is certainly something we're probably going to look at. And I know that is something that is on the table. One more question that I have moving forward, Lawrence, real quickly, is how do Democrats see this playing out with the leadership in terms of Washington, D.C.? Is Nancy Pelosi going to be around much longer?
Look, I see a lot of young, fresh voices that want to be a part of the leadership. She has too much money, and we know in politics, money controls everything, at least on the Democratic side. And when you know a lot of things that happened with Bernie Sanders in the past election, I'm not sure that the Democrats have had a full audit yet, and they're willing to get rid of Nancy. That's just my opinion, though.
The first step is acceptance, so we will see how that goes for them.
True
Lawrence Jones, Kabir Kafari, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Judge Jeanine takes you. FBI's Andrew McCabe viewed his job as one to help Democrats and hurt Trump, using whatever power he had from his FBI perch. Former DOJ attorney J. Christian Adams joins me now. It's great to see you. Now, we're going to start with what the president said about this. He's been criticizing the FBI publicly. President Trump tweeted a series of things today. This is one that he tweeted earlier. How can FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, the man in charge, along with leaking James Comey of the phony Hillary Clinton investigation, including her 33,000 illegally deleted emails, be given $700,000 for wife's campaign by Clinton puppets during investigation? Now, you were in it. You were in the Justice Department. You see how these creatures of government function. How does this happen? How is it that the FBI can treat people differently based on their political leanings?
People need to understand, these people in the FBI and DOJ, they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They think this is normal operating procedure. What the president is referring to is Andrew McCabe's wife was running for office in Virginia, got a load of money from Terry McAuliffe, the governor, who was also under investigation by the FBI. And of course, they don't have to return all that money in Virginia. They can keep it, so Andrew McCabe actually benefited. These people don't think they're doing anything wrong. They think their job, apparently Andrew McCabe thinks, is to protect Democrats.
Well, so this week, Republicans, this week and last week, have been very critical of Andrew McCabe. You have Senator Chuck Grassley, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, calling for him to be removed. We now hear that he's maybe going to retire here in a couple of months, making sure he gets enough time in to get his full pension. So Republican criticism seems warranted based on what we know so far.
Right, but he's still there. And best of all, Katie, he's in the HR department at the FBI where he can replicate himself. You know, I mean, they move people to HR instead of moving them out the door. But that's part of the problem is you have McCabe, you have Rod Rosenstein, who doesn't stop any of the leaks inside the Mueller investigation. He should be firing people who are leaking, not giving them the benefit of the doubt and praising them like he did this week.
So what about the firing? Because people are questioning, why is it that President Trump can't just remove Andrew McCabe from his position, right? My understanding, he is a civil servant. He is not a political appointee, and therefore the president cannot fire him. Now, can Christopher Wray, who is reported, who's the new FBI director, who is reportedly reassigned FBI top lawyer James Baker, or he has actually resigned as well. Is Christopher Wray able to do something about this problem in the FBI? Is he trying to clean house?
Wray is, but so are a lot of other people. And really the problem stops with Rod Rosenstein. Rod Rosenstein, who's the Deputy Attorney General after Sessions recused himself, he has a whole host of deputies who work for him who are giving cover to these FBI people. Anytime this gets brought up, Rosenstein and his deputies push back. They defend McCabe. They defend the FBI. So the problem is both at the FBI but also inside the DOJ.
So there's nothing that the president can do. Should the president be getting involved? Is it consequential for him to be tweeting about it? Does that hurt the Inspector General's investigation into the bias at the FBI, or is it best that he just kind of stays out of it?
Look, I think it's good that we finally have a president who fights back against these bureaucrats, because these bureaucrats have been getting away with it for a very long time. Finally, somebody's paying attention. Thank goodness they're at 1600.
Well, what about the bureaucrats, though? Because the frustration, as I
Goodness, are at 1600.
Well, what about the bureaucrats, though? Because the frustration, as I talked about in the first block with Congressman DeSantis, is there never seems to be any accountability. The IRS was turned into a political tool and weapon against conservatives. It seems like, and based on your experience and what you know, this is the same situation.
Right. Look, they have normalized politics at the Justice Department. You wrote about this about Fast and Furious. You saw this starting to happen years ago, where Holder and Obama began to turn this engine of government power into something that helps their ideological agenda. That's what's happening here. That's what happened during the election.
So how do we move forward with this? How is it that, you know, we live in Washington, D.C. or in Virginia, I call it the freedom side.
That's not their job.
So what about people who would push back and say they're not activists. They're not a gang of politically motivated people. They were simply doing their job.
Yeah, I read the tweets, or I read the texts. That's not a gang of neutral people. That's a gang of people who want to use their power to sabotage a presidential campaign. That's what the FBI did under Andrew McCabe and his cohorts. That's what is still going on at the Justice Department in Rod Rosenstein's office with all of his deputies defending Andrew McCabe.
Well, Jay Christian Adams, always appreciate your input and bringing your experience to the table. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Street justice still ahead, and next, the White House with an angry response after an explosive New York Times article says the president made offensive comments about immigrants. All of it based on anonymous.
160 others are still missing there. The storm blew across the southern part of the Philippines, setting off landslides and causing flooding. It struck as people were gathering for Christmas preparations, a peak travel time. Forecasters say the storm will not blow away from the island until sometime Sunday. And President Trump beginning his Christmas vacation in Florida today with another round of golf at Trump International Golf Course. He was joined by friends and professional golfers Justin Thomas, Daniel Berger, and Jim Herman. The president played a full 18-hole game with one extra hole before returning to the winter White House, what he's called his residence at the private Mar-a-Lago resort. I'm Marianne Rafferty. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine.
Developing tonight, the White House denying a New York Times report citing anonymous sources that say President Trump spoke about immigrants, specifically groups from Haiti and Africa, in a derogatory way. The comments allegedly came during a June meeting with top administration officials. Only the White House says it didn't happen, responding, quote, General Kelly, General McMaster, Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Nielsen, and all other senior staff actually in the meeting deny these outrageous claims, and it's both sad and telling the New York Times would print the lies of their anonymous sources anyway. Here with reaction to this and much more, former Obama campaign foreign policy advisor David Tafuri and GOP strategist Ned Ryan. Well, Ned, here we have another New York Times story with a bunch of anonymous sources alleging that the president used the words AIDS to describe people living in Haiti and huts to describe refugees or immigrants from Nigeria. What do you have to say about this?
Well, Katie, I mean, this is hardly surprising. Here we go again. The opposition party at work. Again, the White House is denying. It's another anonymously sourced piece. That is another sad attack on Donald Trump. But, Katie, I think we're going to see more of this. We're going to see this increase as time goes along because, listen, their Russian collusion fairy tale is falling apart. The wheels are coming off the Mueller investigation. You see the economy surging. You see the markets surging. Trump's actually closing out a very strong first year despite a lot of different attacks. And the mainstream media, I think, starting to get a little bit more desperate. I mean, this guy wasn't supposed to win in the first place, Katie. Now he's actually succeeding. Wasn't he supposed to be impeached by now, according to some of them? Dear God, he's actually succeeding. And you see this liberal elite fury rising that those damnable peasants won't listen to us anymore. And I would tell the mainstream media, you know what? Get used to disappointment and get used to another 7 years of Trump because it's going to happen.
David, what's your reaction to another New York Times story throwing out these very aggressive allegations and without any on-the-record sources to back them up?
I hope your viewers will read this story because it paints a really troubling picture of the White House, and it's based on two sources who were in the meeting, and
anonymous.
Both of those sources...
Anonymous.
Yeah, they're anonymous because they get fired.
Put your name on the record.
Because they get fired if they said who they were. But they also contemporaneously told other people about these comments, and then the story itself is based on dozens of interviews that the New York Times did. And the New York Times knew that they was going to get a lot of pushback on this story, so it brought it up to its top editors. It evaluated the story, and you can be sure it's standing behind the story. Of course, we have libel laws, we have defamation. If anyone thinks the story is not true, they can bring an action against the New York Times.
The president's not gonna,
I bet that's not going to happen because it hasn't happened yet.
Happen. Well,
you know what? Let me
the president is not
finish,
going to. No. Let's move on to a different topic. The president is not going to bring a lawsuit against the New York Times because he'd be suing them every single day. However, let's move on to another topic. Last week, Attorney General Jeff Sessions officially announced an investigation into the handling of the Uranium One scandal under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Ned, is this a good idea? Where is this going to go?
Of course it is. It's about time. I mean, I have a lot of questions. I wrote a piece actually for Fox News Opinion back in October. This deal was done in an expedited fashion. The CFIUS voting members, they got the paperwork in the first week of August of 2010. It was approved October 22nd of 2010. And there were deals, Katie. This was approved faster than a lot of the mergers between two U.S. companies that were approved by the antitrust division inside Obama's DOJ. Why was it expedited? The other question, Katie, is why were we giving away uranium when we actually have to import 89% of the uranium that we use? The other question I think needs to be answered is, we knew, some of the CFIUS voting members knew, there was a bribery attempt by the Russian government of U.S. executives in the uranium industry, and they still went ahead and approved this issue. And the last one, the $145 million question, Katie, is what is the relationship between the Uranium One deal and the Clinton Foundation? Was our Secretary of State at that time influence peddling and actually using her position for personal gain and putting it ahead of our national security interests?
So, David, on that note of national security, given your experience and your advising to former President Barack Obama, if Democrats are so worried about Russia being an influence in the world and being an enemy of the United States, which they are, by the way, why would Hillary Clinton sit on this board of directors, essentially, while having this conflict of interest at the Clinton Foundation, the Global Initiative, and approve the sale of uranium to Russia through another company?
It's important to get some of the facts straight. It's not a board of directors. CFIUS is a U.S. government committee that approves of mergers and acquisitions that will affect national security. There are 9 heads of U.S. government agencies on that committee. So there was no way that Hillary Clinton on her own could have dominated that committee. And any one out of the 9 can stop a deal. All 9 voted in favor of this deal. So it's important to get the facts right. Now, this is about 7 or 8 years old. It's been investigated before. If there's new evidence, like this informant, it should be investigated. You know what, Ned? Let me finish. Let me ask you another question. It should be investigated, and if anything else comes up, then we should investigate it further. But so far, Sessions has refused to put in place a special counsel because there isn't sufficient evidence for there to be a special counsel.
David, let me jump in. David, let me jump in here.
All of this is a distraction from the real special counsel investigation.
Let me just jump in here and ask you a follow-up question. So Hillary Clinton is the only person on that board who benefited to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars to her own personal foundation. Do you at least see some kind of conflict with that position and her using her State Department position to get money for her foundation?
Well, now you have to break this down. The money went to a foundation, which is a charitable organization, and the money from the charitable organization went to charities. None of it went to Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton personally. That's really important to note.
Bill
and you can look at the tax returns
for speeches.
Look, I want to deal on facts. You can look at the tax returns for the Clinton Foundation, and you can see that.
Facts, if we want to know what's actually done,
we gotta go.
If we really want to know why CFIUS, these voting members, approved this deal, Katie, I think Devin Nunes should extend an invitation for them to come in front of the House Intelligence Committee. If they won't come of their own volition, he subpoenas them and asks each one of them under oath, hopefully in a public setting, why did you approve this deal in an expedited fashion? Who got the benefits? Was it Democrat donors? Was it Clinton Foundation? Was there actually something to this? Let them answer under oath, and then we can get some real answers.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Both of you, David Tafuri and Ned Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Katie.
America is facing high-tech threats from around the world, and our government needs to be on the cutting edge of technology and innovation to keep us safe. Production of the F-35 fighter jet was recently ramped up. It's a truly remarkable stealth fighter that will be in use by our government in some of the most dangerous areas of the globe. Judge Jeanine recently visited Lockheed Martin's Fighter Demonstration Center for a first-hand look at the unbelievable technology behind the F-35. She even got to fly in an F-35 simulator. Very jealous. Take a look.
So here we are in Arlington, Virginia, at the Lockheed Martin Fighter Demonstration Center. And we are actually going to be flying, kind of, an F-35, which is an amazing stealth vehicle that you've been hearing a lot about in the political arena. We're going to show you what an amazing plane this is. Okay, I can see a light. All right, and now I sit. Is there a seat belt? This is our camera?
Yes.
Hi. I'm here at the center with Al Norman and Bob Rubino, both of them former Navy pilots. You're a test pilot. All right, you want to correct me already, I can tell. What would you say that the F-35 has to offer that no other airplane has to offer?
Well, Judge, I'd say the F-35 is the only multi-role fighter available to the world. It combines the attributes of stealth, sensor-fused mission system avionics, and network-centric operations, in other words, connectivity between airplanes, to allow pilots now that fly the airplane to go places they couldn't go before, to know things they could never know before, to execute their mission and come home safely.
What does that signify when the big flames come out the back?
It makes you go faster.
Oh, we're going to do this a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you put your arm here, and this is what we call the control stick. And you pull back on
So this is a double-fisted thing.
It
huh?
is.
Am I pressing that button?
No, we may press it later, but we don't need to press it right now.
Is there a bomb in that?
There's a gun in that.
Oh, there's a gun. Sorry. Between all of the, what you would see on an old airplane, you see the dials, none of that stuff is visible on this F-35. I mean, is it a new way to fight? Is this offering us the ability to be safer?
It's not only a new way to fight, it's a new way to think.
Your mission today is to attack a control tower at an enemy airfield. And we're going to go and do that with 2,000-pound bombs that we have internal to the aircraft. Those are what you're going to be using to drop. These little circles,
Yes.
they're actually squares with circles around them. Those are bad guy airplanes.
How do I drop the bomb?
It'd be this
The
button.
red one.
We want to give our men and women in uniform an unfair edge if they have to go into combat. It gives them the ability to go execute the mission and come back safely every time. And that's what F-35 is going to do for the U.S. services.
I'm going to push go. You're not going to be flying the airplane.
I
You
can
put it
shoot
where you
this
want.
guy now?
Not yet. You're almost there in range. Just push and hold the button.
The red button?
Yep. You can watch your weapon bay door open up there, and the bomb goes away. You could drop another one if you want. You have 2 of them.
Right.
And it shows you a couple seconds to impact. There's a couple of the flashes, and you just took out that hangar.
This airplane, because of those attributes, like you said, allow the pilot to decide what to do and when to do. So instead of those knobs and dials that we're used to, and being a technician and operating those, we've now become a tactician of the battle space, and we know everything that's going on around us.
Now we're slowing down to release your right pedal. Perfect. There's a couple of other F-35s on the deck.
Tell them to get out of the way.
See your little airplane right there?
I see. Yeah,
You'll see
but where's the ship?
It's going to come in a minute, right here. Just keep looking up, and we'll go to 0 when we get above the ship.
With what?
Yep, if you want to. Don't do it yet. Don't do it yet. There's your airplane.
So I'll land
ship.
in the ocean,
Go ahead and
right?
do it now. Correct. So helicopter, look down to your left. There's the ship. So now we want to line up with that yellow line, and the way we do that is our left foot. Push to your left foot.
This is amazing. It flies itself.
Just keep coming.
That is unbelievable.
There you go. You heard the tire?
Yeah. I get the sense that it really gives the pilot the ability to think as opposed to trying to figure things out.
That's exactly.
Actually, the pilot's not thinking, this is thinking.
It's both of you. It's both of you.
Oh, that's nice. I wasn't thinking much. But, all right, you getting out? So you stand up again, I assume?
Again is the easiest way to do it.
There you go. That's it.
A little heavy. Wow. Everything that I saw in the cockpit, I'm seeing in this helmet.
If you turn your head, you'll be able to see that all that information still follows you. If you look down between your legs, you can see what's below you.
Oh, that is incredible. It's beautiful. It's clear. It's worth every penny. Amazing. So everybody go out and buy one.
Man, so awesome. Very jealous. She definitely had the best flight suit in the building. Coming up, the Obama administration under fire after a new report says they let the terror group Hezbollah off the hook to make sure the deal with Iran went through. We're talking about it next. Here with reaction to this and President Trump's national security speech earlier this week, retired Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw, who was a Navy SEAL for 10 years, along with Middle East journalist and founding editor of Foreign Desk News, terror analyst as well, Lisa Daftari. Thank you both so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Lisa, I want to start with you. This bombshell report shows that the Obama administration allegedly stopped the DEA from continuing prosecutions of Hezbollah agents operating inside the United States and South America. What does this say about the Obama administration's foreign policy, and how does it make the Trump administration's isolation of Iran harder?
Yeah, you know, diplomacy is a wonderful thing. Warming of ties with a nation that we've not had diplomatic ties with for over 4 decades is even a more beautiful thing, particularly if it means economic or national security gain for the United States. But it's an awful thing when it means selling out the American people and the Iranian people. When you look at this deal, and we talked about this before, because analysts like myself and many others were very critical of it, because at every turn there were these inconvenient truths, facts that showed us that the Iranian regime was not looking to curb its activities, whether it was at home with its human rights records or in the region, reaching its tentacles into Iraq and Syria and Yemen, undermining U.S. national security and our foreign policy plans. And now, when you add to this all these different layers, Hezbollah, which is a direct tentacle of the Iranian regime, supported by them since 1980, you see that this was yet another national security issue, or you can look at it more as a domestic issue here with our drug problem in this country, and it was completely overlooked in the light of pushing forward this deal.
Right, and Hezbollah is not a ragtag team of terrorists who are hiding in caves. They are a very sophisticated global organization that was responsible for more American murders pre-9/11 than any other terrorist organization. Dan, I want to speak to you specifically about that issue. You served in Iraq and Afghanistan. A lot of this money that they were using, that they were funneling through drug cartels and working with the Venezuelans on, was used for weapons to kill American troops. What your reaction to that?
That's absolutely correct. And not only have I been to Iraq and Afghanistan, I've been on the ground in Lebanon and Beirut. I've seen firsthand what Hezbollah can do and their capabilities. The threats that they pose to us, our Lebanese partners, our Israeli allies, they're a global threat. And as you said, they're sophisticated. Their counterintelligence capabilities are high. We need to be worried about these things, not giving them handouts for some miscalculated foreign policy achievement.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, the Obama administration and the officials who worked on the Iran deal, Ben Rhodes in particular, has fought back against this story without actually citing any facts about what's wrong and anything that's in the story that's inaccurate. Moving forward, how does the Trump administration carry out the president's national security strategy in isolating Iran as the problem with the Saudis, the Egyptians in the Middle East, with this, years-long investigation that was hampered? It seems like they have a lot of catching up to do.
A lot. It's very tough to turn back 8 years of this apologist foreign policy that put everyone else first and America last. Now, President Trump is attempting to put America first, and it's very ironic how he gets pushback, from Americans. First of all, when you have the pushback from Americans who say that we shouldn't cut foreign aid over, for example, the UN Jerusalem vote, or that we shouldn't deliver a slap on the wrist to Pakistan or any other nation getting these free handouts from the United States. This is not money that came from Donald Trump's piggy bank. This is taxpayer money. So left, right, and center, this affects all of us. And when you have, President Trump standing at the podium on Monday and delivering what I thought was a very strong and centrist foreign policy strategy that puts us first, that talks about economic strength, it talks about political strength, it talks about peace through strength. And I think that's a wonderful thing that all Americans should agree on.
Dan, the Trump administration laid out 4 pillars. Based on your experience, what is different about the Trump administration's approach to national security compared to the Obama administration moving forward?
Well, there's a lot of things to like here. There's a huge focus on border security. That is extremely important to us in Texas. We are on the front lines. I've been on the front lines in a lot of places, but as Texans, we are on the front lines of border security here. I also like that he focuses on economic security and identifying economics as a pillar of national security. That's extremely important. And we just got a huge win this week with the tax reform bill. That's going to be a big part of that. Making America competitive all around the world. I mean, that's part of national security, border security, national security, and he's also rebuilding the military. I have seen morale dip over the years, and I have seen it, especially in the special operations community, morale is picking up under this president. And that's because he's unleashing the capabilities that we have. We're taking the fight to the enemy. people know where we stand in this world now. This
Right.
national security document is about clarity, and it's great. And there's a lot of wins this week. You know,
Good to hear.
Nikki Haley in the UN, really. I mean, it's great.
We like Nikki Haley at the UN a lot. Lisa, speaking of taking the fight to the enemy, one of the most undercover stories of the year is the wins against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. That has been underreported to a significant extent, but that doesn't mean that the FBI isn't busy here at home with 1,000+ cases open in every single state. So how does the administration move forward domestically in fighting jihadism here at home?
I think there is a strong focus on the reality of the situation that has been ignored for many years, meaning we've always said if we can win the ground battle against ISIS overnight, which we could and we actually did, it wasn't overnight, but it was fairly quickly under the Trump foreign policy, there is then this fixation on you can't beat ISIS just on the ground battle, but because they've spread so perversely throughout the internet and on the web, on the dark web that, you know, a lot of us are still covering and looking at how they sprout up on all different types of social media platforms, chat rooms, putting out all types of media. But I think the Trump administration understands that fight, the fact that this kind of the low-hanging fruit, meaning the easy recruits that are sought after, whether it's on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, et cetera, to fight that message. And it's a very daunting task. But I think a lot of that, of our resources are being put on the local fight, kind of on the local fight, and also on the social media, cybersecurity, et cetera.
Dan, quick last word to you.
No, I agree with everything Lisa said. It's extremely important to take the fight home here, work with our local law enforcement, defeat radicalization here at home. Those are the kind of attacks we're going to see a lot of in the future that aren't necessarily big, complicated attacks like 9/11, but those lone wolf attacks that come from radicalization.
Right. Well, we'll see how we do it moving forward. The new year is right around the corner. Commander Dan Crenshaw, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much.
What would you buy Donald Trump for Christmas?
Anything he wants. I would get Donald Trump my life. I love him.
If you had to buy Donald Trump a gift for Christmas, what would you buy him?
Condoms?
If you had to buy Donald Trump a gift for Christmas, what would you buy him?
Impeachment.
If he doesn't get impeached, what would you get him?
A vacation in Bali.
Didn't Hillary get money from Bali?
No, Hillary did everything right.
And there you have it for Manhattan. If Donald Trump were on your Christmas list, you had to buy him a gift, what would you buy him?
Well, it wouldn't be a tie because he's got plenty of them, okay?
Right.
So I would just give him lots of prayers.
Yes, a prayer that he continue to do what he's doing, because I feel safer. I feel that we are finally coming around, and I have a feeling that with God's help, he's going to unite us all.
All right, Brixton, if you had to buy Donald Trump a gift for Christmas, what would you buy him? Come here. Good. Would you give him a kiss? Okay, I think he's kind of giving him a smooch. If you had to buy Donald Trump a Christmas present, what would you buy him?
Oh, man. I know
That's a tough one, I know.
I wouldn't give him $1 million because that would mean nothing. I think a heartfelt thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I can't wait to vote again for you in 2020. We'll have to do.
A big American flag.
A hat and a scarf. Make sure he's warm in the White House.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
A hard pillow because I love him.
Aw, and you?
Oh, probably a bottle of champagne to celebrate him being a president. And us
But he doesn't drink alcohol. He never drinks.
Well, then we'll get him some sparkling apple juice.
Buy him a muzzle.
I'll bet you two have a great relationship.
How about a Hillary Clinton dartboard?
So here I am at the Truffleist at Bryant Park, and I think this is the perfect place to actually buy something for President Trump. Truffle oil. If you were going to buy something for President Trump, if he were on your list, what would you buy him? I'm buying him truffle oil. What are you buying him?
I'm going to buy him the wall.
Will you help him build it?
Absolutely not, but I got truffles.
If you had to buy President Trump a gift for Christmas, what would you buy him?
Oh my gosh, something gold.
Yeah?
Something beautiful. Maybe a nice pin.
A nice pin?
A nice pin, so he can sign all those correct orders in for our country.
So you like those executive orders?
I most certainly do.
Okay, but what do you think he needs?